Now, here's your host, Action News reporter Jeff Lewis.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Action News called Criminal Justice Systems in Crisis. It's called Systems in Crisis because although we will be talking about Fresno County, other counties around the valley are facing similar situations. The problem is that criminal justice systems are becoming overburdened and underfunded. Too few people and facilities to handle the large number of crimes and criminals. The result is less safety and protection for the public. With us to explore this critical and timely issue today are Fresno County Sheriff Steve Magarian, Fresno County District Attorney Ed Hunt, Presiding Superior Court Judge Stephen Henry, and Fresno County Administrative Officer Bruce Spalding, and Don Hogner, the head of Fresno County's Probation Department. Now let's take a very brief look at how the criminal justice system works.
The Sheriff's Department and other police departments within the county make arrests, but they do so with fewer officers while the overall county population grows. Suspects often go to jail, but it is a jail that is overcrowded and under court orders to make reductions. The system then must decide who is the most dangerous while others are set free. Suspects go to trials handled by judges and attorneys who are staggering under growing caseloads, and criminals are later monitored by probation department officers who are trying to keep track of them.
Now that's the situation right now, and under proposed budget cuts for Fresno County, it's going to get worse with 200 or more layoffs county-wide. Now let's start with Fresno County Sheriff Steve Magarian and take a few minutes to tell us what you know about your budget and how those budget cuts would affect you. Actually, you have two hats here. You are the county's top law enforcement man and the jailer, so maybe you could address both of those areas.
Okay. I think that's one of the biggest problems we have, Jeff, is that we have to address both areas, and the budget's looked at from the Sheriff's Department as one pot, and they don't separate the law enforcement side from the correction or the jail side. Unfortunately, what's been happening in the Sheriff's Department the last few years is the same pot of money is being used to fund the department, but there's been a shift that's taken place. We've gone from a 2/3 law enforcement budget and 1/3 corrections budget to starting to shift to a 1/2 Sheriff's Department budget and a 1/2 jail budget. Our mission at the Sheriff's Department, as I see it, is to protect the public that we serve, and we've been sworn to serve. About
At a
3 or
certain
4
point, they're
years
going to be
ago-
prosecuted. Now, you stand to lose, well, you can tell us a little bit about the budget that's coming down the pike for you.
Sure. Well, the recommended budget is that we lose 10 deputy district attorney positions. One is a senior deputy, which is the most experienced of our trial lawyers. The deputy 4 positions, which are the other 9, are staffed by folks who've been in the office an average of about 8 or 9 years apiece. So to take 10 of the most experienced lawyers from our office would decimate our ability to service the Superior Court in any responsible fashion. Since I've been DA, our caseload has gone up 54%. In the event that we lose 10 deputy district attorneys in this budget year, we will be attempting to do a job that is 54% greater with 1 less attorney than I had when I was elected.
Let's try to explain what this would mean to a person sitting at home watching this program who does not commit crimes, who just wants his county to do a good job. What does this effectively mean to them, the fact that you are having problems prosecuting the cases that come down the pike? Do people get turned loose? What is the end result?
Absolutely. We have 48 hours to file a case for someone who has been arrested and is in jail. If we don't file it within 48 hours, they get out. If we fail to file a case within 1 year, a misdemeanor case, the statute of limitations runs and we can never file it. If we file it and a warrant issues and the warrant isn't served in a year, we can no longer prosecute the case. What the net effect will be, in my opinion, will be that the criminal intelligence network, and I think there is one, the information will become public all over the state that Fresno County is a great place to commit crime. Number one, because the sheriff's staff will be decimated. My staff will be decimated.
Make his job more difficult because he has fewer people to work with. The next step, many of these cases will wind up in the court system and some before you, Judge Henry. Knowing what you do about the situation the county is in, what is that going to do to, well, the protection of the public and individuals' rights to a fair trial?
Well, I think you have to first to understand what the Superior Court is. It is that trial court of general jurisdiction in the state that handles all those matters that are not given to the lower courts. Directly, as it pertains to this subject, we will be able to handle all the criminal cases that come before us in a timely fashion. But I think the subtle impact has to be recognized. I'd like to hear Sheriff Magarian and District Attorney Hunt tell me how well these cases are going to be investigated and how well they're going to be able to be presented when they do come to court. Because my strong suspicion is when the sheriff is sending his people to put out the fires, catch the robbers, book them, and send them in, they're going to have a real hard time going back, contacting witnesses, doing the kind of investigations that will enable Mr. Hunt to have his witnesses at least for review. He's going to be without adequate investigative staff. He can't pick up the ball as I understand it. I suspect we're going to be trying more cases of marginal caliber. And those who are convicted and who do present themselves to be eligible for probation are going to be confronted with a situation where the court expects, you know, these are the people who we deem are suitable for probation, who have an opportunity to straighten their lives out, and when we send them to our probation officer, he's not going to be able to do much with them. So that's the impact that's a little more subtle than the direct impact that it's going to have on these folks.
So your concern then is how well those cases are going to be prepared. Move on to Mr. Wagner in the probation department. What is this budget, proposed budget, going to do to you and your mission?
It's going to frustrate our mission, Jeff. It's basically going to take us out of the picture in terms of providing any kind of meaningful supervision for offenders. I'd like to give some perspective at this point for where the probation department finds itself. We're a department that has a budget of $12.5 million, and we have 326 employees. What many people in this community do not realize is that I have the same kind of bifurcation of responsibilities that the sheriff has. I administer an institution, and our budget is 45% institution. We are giving priority to institutional services just as the sheriff is, but it is creating a drain on resources on the probation supervision side of the department. Looking at what has happened since 1978-79 when Proposition 13 passed, we had 305 employees at that time. 100 of them were deputy probation officers. And in 1980-81, we had dropped about 5 positions. We were at 300. And then in 1981, with the board's help, we were able to open the second floor of the annex at Juvenile Hall, and we acquired 32 new counselor positions to operate that. So we jumped then to 332 employees. Today, 1986-87, we have 326. We have 11 fewer deputy probation officers than we had in 78-79. And in order to give this some perspective, in 1978-79, when Proposition 13 passed, when I had 100 deputies, I had 8,000 people on probation in Fresno County. Today, with 11 fewer, a 4% reduction, I've got 89 deputy probation officers, and I have 22,000 people on probation. So the workload has increased 185%, while the workforce has decreased 4%. It is, we are understaffed already. Last year, for the first time in the history of our department, I formally notified the presiding judge of the Superior Court, Judge Henry, and the Board of Supervisors that I did not have adequate resources to meet statutory mandates. The situation that I'm faced with is that today, as we sit here, I have used a nationally validated classification system to identify those offenders that are most likely to recidivate. And I have focused the diminished resources that I have on them to provide supervision. There are 750 drug offenders. There are 964 burglars. There are 457 people for assaultive behavior. There are 125 robbers, and let me clarify, armed robbers in this county go to state prison. These are robbery, force, and fear, and strong-arm robbers that are on probation. We have 330 sex offenders that are on probation. I'm going to be left, once this budget is adopted, with 4 deputies to supervise 2,026 of this category offender. Now, you tell me which one of those is going to get the priority for the supervision. And you tell me if that leaves this community feeling good about itself in terms of public protection. I don't think it does.
Okay. Bruce, we've heard some pretty grim assessments of what this budget is going to do to the criminal justice system. First of all, do you concur? And how do we get that way? How do we get this to this place?
Well, Fresno County is a no-frills government. Fresno County has no optional services. We don't have summer recreational programs, community centers, things that other governments have the luxury of providing. Fresno County provides the basic critical services needed by our citizens. Public protection and law enforcement is probably the most basic. You've heard comments from the individuals here about aspects of the criminal justice system, but in county government there's a lot more that's part of the system as well. We certainly haven't heard this morning from the municipal court. You can't have a superior court without the county clerk as a support capacity. You can't have sheriff's patrol vehicles out there if you don't have a fleet management division, a fleet management division that's supporting them, or a purchasing department that's buying the supplies for the jail. So that not only are these departments directly affected, but a number of other departments in county government are also intimately related to the criminal justice system. Well, what we've done over the last several years, because of our severe curtailment in revenue, is cut back on departments that were less noticed. We've cut back on, let's say, the auditor controller, or the assessor, or the tax collector. But at a point that makes no more sense. The assessor's office produces the revenue that supplies the money for the sheriff's office and the DA. The tax collector does that as well. The revenue reimbursement division of the auditor controller does that. To cut further in some of those departments in terms of reducing even more staff would have the negative effect of having even less revenue for the departments we've talked about this morning. So what's happened in Fresno County government is we've cut out everything else we could in order to not have to cut into criminal justice. We've done that over the last 3 years, and now the only
Direct conflict with their duty to provide protection to the public, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
That's correct.
I think the question that I have is that if they, I would like to believe that they have adopted that posture, believing that that's what the people of this county want. If enough people spoke up and spoke out and said, we would like you to do otherwise, do you think there is a likelihood they might review that posture and modify it?
Well, the Constitution of the state of California says that if a local government wants to do a borrowing, a general obligation borrowing, that it could put it before the people, and if it receives 2/3 vote of the local populace for whatever the particular purpose being suggested is, then that the board can then the board can proceed. The difficulty with that particular process is, of course, it's very lengthy. If you go and seek
I wanted to have some more time to talk about another aspect, and that is the state. The state has, many people have looked to the state as with a $1 billion surplus, feeling that some of this money should go to the counties to relieve some of their problems. Unfortunately, we do not have time to get into that today. We're going to have to cut this short.
Chief Probation Officer Don Hogner hopes to save 6 or 7 probation officers slated for layoffs and to prevent the closure of C.K. Wakefield School for at least 1 year. The Board of Supervisors must make final decisions on the
This day in and day out is to develop programs that will help troubled youth turn their lives around. We miss the mark sometimes, but we hit the mark an awful lot also.
Current budget proposals would stop commitments to Wakefield November 1st, phase down to just an 8-hour-a-day operation by April, and close by the end of June. In the process, 17 people would lose their jobs. Hogner is banking that the people of Fresno County will demand that that not happen.
I don't think they're going to turn their backs on them. I fully expect that this community is going to be heard from regarding the closure of C.K. Wakefield.
For this youngster, being nabbed for burglary, plus time in Wakefield, has changed the direction his life was going. Today, he's got a job.
You know, I can learn from, you know, like all the mistakes I did before, you know, I could work instead of getting in trouble. And, you know, it helped me a lot being in Wakefield.
Hogner adds that those youths who don't respond to a helping hand are, in fact, off the streets. They are not doing the crimes that put them in Wakefield. And those who do may well avoid a life of crime. Either way, he says doing without the facility may mean a higher price. Toiling for Fresno County, starting at the bottom and winding up at the top of his field, Chief Probation Officer Don Hogner is moving on. He's not leaving because it's tough, he says. Nobody would do that and then move to Oakland.
Yeah, but does it show what the begin date was there?
On September 5th, Don Hogner will head to Alameda County to become its Chief Probation Officer, a job he's held in Fresno for 5 years. He's put in 24 years of county service, but when the opportunity for a new challenge presented itself, Hogner said it's time.
It's important to stay on the learning curve. Don't stay in one spot until you get so bored with your proficiency that you become callous and insensitive.
Hogner had 3 goals when he became chief in 1983, restructuring the juvenile institutions, creating an offender classification system, and automating his department. That computerization, he says, helped keep it afloat when budget year after budget year brought staffing levels lower and lower.
Had we not had the office technology that we've been able to get, we would never have been able to keep up just with the clerical kinds of responsibilities that the department took.
The other 2 goals have been met as well, and no layoffs are expected this year, facts that are making leaving a little easier. Even with mixed feelings, Hogner is convinced new blood and a change will make a good department better. He's just glad to have been part of the record so far.
You want to be good. You want to be on top of your game, and you want to, when you leave, you want to leave with people feeling that they will miss you.
Hogner credits the community and the rest of Fresno County departments with choosing to approach probation issues as everyone's problem, making his job and that of his staff possible. He will, he adds, most definitely miss that spirit of cooperation.
And this man is the definition of a public servant.
This is my final...
For nearly 25 years, Don Hogner has been a fixture in the halls of Fresno County's probation department.
It's a lot to walk away from, huh?
He started as a county social worker, but for the last 5 years, he's served as a chief probation officer. He's leaving Fresno for a new challenge in the same position in Alameda County.
He's a super guy. He really is. He's just a super guy.
Has he been a pretty fair boss?
He's a very nice boss. Always been supportive with us and everything. It's a great place to work.
Are you going to miss him?
Very much so. He's always been so supportive.
Hogner's troops have always rallied around him, even in the recent lean years when county dollars were few and staff cuts were plentiful.
There is no benefit to sniveling. I mean, you just may as well understand that you fight hard, and I have tried to be a strong advocate and an intelligent advocate for the needs of probation while it was appropriate to be an advocate. Let me tell you, my soapbox has been for 5 years in this community that we have in the last decade in the state spent $3.5 billion building new jails and new prisons. And I ask you, do you feel $3.5 billion safer today than you did 10 years ago in your home or in your community? Sooner or later, the taxpayers of this state are going to have to take a serious look at alternatives to straight confinement.
Hogner says long ago he wanted to be a teacher, but one thing he's tried to impress on his staff and the people he works for is the probation department is an agency that holds people accountable. Therefore, the department itself must be accountable.
I love this department. I love this community. I still consider, even though I'm moving to the Bay Area, Fresno's my home. I'm not selling my home here. In my mind, I will return to Fresno.
In Fresno, Warren Armstrong, 47 Eyewitness News.
He will be missed, and not just by the people he works with either, and we wish him the best of luck.